Meet Patrick Alton, at home and at work at Laguna. He's one of Australia's top jingle men who fled the fast pace of Sydney 14 years ago for the ideal isolation of the Wollombi Valley.
Isolation is, if you're a writer, you've got to keep writing. The discipline of writing means you've got to apply yourself, and you need the peace and quiet to do it in, because I'm very easily distracted.
Patrick, his wife Jenny and 3 children, a couple of dogs and a cat, enjoy the country life, but phones, faxes and the new freeway keep Patrick in touch with national and overseas accounts. For the sake of dropping names, try Ansett, Compass and Singapore Airlines, Goodyear, Chevrolet and Chrysler.
I get a phone call, and sometimes I have to go to Singapore, sometimes I have to go, I go a lot to Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane, and you just take a guitar or go and find a piano and you take the job, bring it back here and finish off the writing, and it's on the road.
Local jingles are his bread and butter, but Patrick is also negotiating the release of a country music album, and in his spare time he's co-produced a 2.5-hour musical with Newcastle's Cliff Hanna. Called Ned, it's the story of the Kelly Gang, and the pair hope to make it a stage smash.
We researched the music, we researched the story. He gave me a libretto. It took 2.5 to 3 years to write. It's now finished. We've recorded some. We hope it'll hit the road within a few years, but that's a very slow process.
I've given a firm assurance there will be no amalgamations, there will be no split up of councils. That's not the intention. The intention is to get the boundaries so that the councils truly represent a cohesive community.
StarQuest is a fitting name for the event. A competition for school kids, it unearths talents like 11-year-old Chantel Morrison from Swansea, who took out the primary school dance solo. She may be small in stature, but she's definitely big when it comes to tapping talent. Chantel beat 15 other competitors to win the Newcastle heat. This routine, devised by coach Janelle Buckingham, also catching the eye of the StarQuest judges. For 8 years she's been stepping the boards. Chantel hopes to be tripping the light fantastic to a career on the stage.
I want to teach all different kinds of things, and I want to do shows like 42nd Street and just stuff like that.
Greg Ortell was speaking after a quick tour of Newcastle and its immediate environs in his capacity as president of the Greater Minneapolis Convention and Visitors Association. And boy, was he impressed.
You have the world's greatest asset, and that, of course, is water. And you have some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen.
Greg was also forthcoming with advice about what we can do to add to our natural attractions, like an exhibition centre and a classy hotel, and we also have to reconsider our approach to marketing.
Step back from the trees and take a good look at the forest. I don't think you realize what you have here, and you've got some tremendous assets, and you need to capitalize on them.
Americans are setting the pace in the convention hosting business, so Newcastle's bureau chief, Horst Endrelat, was keen to hear of comparable US cities to us like Duluth, Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
They had to revamp their whole economical base, and they went. Those three cities went into the convention market very successful, and I think we can learn a big lesson from what they have done.
Those who use the Williams River between the Seam Weir and Clarence Town will have to find a new playground. This is the problem, a microscopic organism. Samples tested today show the algae particles clustered in huge numbers, up to 40,000 in just 1 millilitre of water.
Blue-green algae can actually form toxins that are dangerous to people and animals.
Hot weather and still water combine to provide the perfect conditions for algae. A large bloom so early heralds what could be a disastrous summer. The bloom may continue to spread, sucking oxygen as it expands. Fish may die. Landowners along the Williams have been warned to keep stock away from the river. There's no swimming, no boating, no water skiing.
At this stage, we've done some tests on it, and that hasn't shown to be toxic, but that doesn't mean that it can't turn toxic.
Poor land management is also partly to blame for this current predicament.
Land management practices will have to be improved, and that will be addressed through the Total Catchment Management Committee that's been formed for the Williams under the Hunter Catchment Management Trust.
The Hunter Water Corporation and the Department of Water Resources are monitoring the bloom daily. There's not much else they can do. The rest is up to the weather. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
The two mines affected by the decision are New Vale and Awabba. New Vale, which has no current contracts for coal, will be closed and 114 staff laid off. Awabba will have its workforce reduced by more than 80 to 60. Its future depends on Newstand Mine.
What we intend to do there is, in fact, pursue export orders from coal from the Newstand Mine and replace that coal with coal from Awabba.
The mines have been up for sale for 2 years, but according to Pacific Power, the prices offered for all but one mine were well below their true worth.
But it was always held that we would not be embarking on a fire sale, that if we got an attractive price for the mines that we would sell them. But at the end of the day, there was only one bid that was sufficiently attractive to warrant the sale.
The only mine likely to be sold is Munmora State Mine. Negotiations are continuing with Lakeside Mining. In all, 7 organisations submitted 40 offers for the mines. Mr Bunyan denies the 2-year tendering process has been a waste of time and money.
No, it hasn't been a waste of time. In fact, one would have to say that the process really started a couple of years ago when in fact we sought competitive bids for coal into our power stations in the Central Coast area. And we have achieved a 15% reduction in coal costs as a result of those competitive bids.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Day 4 of the match and the pitch was still yielding plenty of runs in the morning session. If your timing was right, you were guaranteed a boundary. Spin was introduced early and David Friedman struck a telling blow. Steve Mace joined David Marjoriebanks and hammered one to the fence. just before the rain arrived to throw a different complexion on the match. Shortly after, May stepped down the track and a neat piece of keeping gave Freedman his second wicket, and Newcastle started to look a little shaky.
A subsequent inquiry cleared him of any corruption allegation.
There is some very strong feelings between me and 6 of the councillors who voted for me to be suspended. I'm firmly convinced that there was a hidden agenda to it, as that became obvious as time went on. And, you know, those 6 people, I won't forget what they did to me. I believe it was deliberate, and it was a vendetta.
And Sess Cotton reserved a special salvo just for Shire President Bevan O'Regan.
That he has changed his tact from one of corruption to one of ethics, well, I doubt his ethics.
Mr Cotton has made a submission to the Department of Local Government concerning what's in store for the council, which he says has a bright future if differences can be ironed out.
Unless my successor is given more support and more protection than what I have, the same thing is going to happen again. I believe that the biggest problem I had was the lack of support at the top levels at the appropriate times.
In a show of unity, yacht clubs from all over the lake joined with the Royal Motor Yacht Club of New South Wales at Toronto for their annual 30-mile Pool Bar Island Classic. And the yachties responded in kind, with over 70 starters in the 2 divisions heading off to Pool Bar Island and return. Conditions weren't conducive for the record breakers. Overcast skies and a lack of substantial breeze, making it a casual day out on beautiful Lake Macquarie. For some, though, the pressure of competition, no matter how much you're enjoying the day, can be just too much at times. At the halfway mark, 3 yachts had settled down to battle it out. Sticks, Doug Coulter's Ozfire and Let's Go streeted the field by Killaban Bay. And just after 3:30 this afternoon, Ozfire crossed the finish line in front of the RMYC at Toronto, just shading Let's Go, who performed superbly, and Sticks also in good form on the day. The overall place getters and the handicap winners are still being decided.
It's a $250,000 check-up system for our atmosphere, and by early next year there'll be another 3 of these stations operating in the Hunter. It's part of the state government's $10 million metropolitan air quality study, and today Environment Minister Chris Hartcher opened the first of the Hunter stations at National Park. Controlled by the Environment Protection Authority, the station will record the level of substances in the air. And Mr Hartcher says the situation isn't as bad as it seems.
What it has showed up until now, in fact, is that the situation has improved over the last few months. It's not as bad really this year as it was before.
Fed information via a special vacuum duct, the station will provide a daily rundown of air quality. Once the full network is operational and a data bank established, a community hotline will be set up, giving the public a chance to phone in for air quality forecasts. Mr Hartcher says the stations will work with industry monitors, rejecting claims of a Big Brother situation.
Certainly not. What it's designed to do, in fact, is to assist industry with their own programs for improving air quality.
Another station was opened at Wallsend. 2 more are being built at Katara and Woodbury. Matthew White, NBN News.
The relationship between Captain Gary Kennedy, his crew and the children and staff of the Stewart Centre began 18 months ago when the ship HMAS Tobruk was being refitted in Newcastle. The crew adopted the Stewart Centre as their charity and since then have raised money and helped out whenever they can.
We've provided some labour, if you like, to build a gazebo as part of their nature trail that they're building in a phased project, if you like. We had a number of sailors coming out, and while most were working on board the ship, some were working out here in rather more pleasant surroundings.
Captain Kennedy leaves for land duties in Canberra this week. Today he said goodbye to his young friends. It's not the end, however. The association between the ship and the centre will continue. Captain Kennedy has made sure of that. He was given an album containing photos of a recent trip to Sydney when the students spent the day with the crew, a day they'll never forget.
The cruise was a memorable experience from the students of the Stewart School, Newcastle.
Thank you very much.
This is Magnolia House at Rankin Park, right next door to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital. It has 4 beds, a kitchen, bathroom and lounge room, all the comforts of home. But the people who stay here do so for only a night or two, while their relatives or friends undergo renal treatment at Royal Newcastle Hospital, the Wangi Dialysis Centre or the John Hunter.
It's very hard, especially if they have to make the trips daily. This is why they need to stay overnight. When they're training on dialysis, they're in the area for a couple of months.
The unit was once the matron's quarters of the old Rankin Park Hospital. The Hunter and Northern Kidney Association has fitted it out at a cost of $5,000. It will assist people from Lismore to the Central Coast. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
East End and Newcastle Hill residents, along with historians and conservationists, will be attending the auction with a big cheque, and that's about all it is. It's filled with zeros because those who'll present it believe they already own the land.
We believe that the state didn't have to buy the land, it was always the citizens' land, and we also believe, therefore, that they shouldn't be selling it and making money out of our land.
It's state government land and it's leased to the owner of the top of the town motor inn, but the government now intends to put the site, along with the adjoining bus depot, up for sale. Conservationists claim the foundations of a historic prison lie buried under the motel and should be preserved. But the owner of the top of town has plans for a $3.5 million redevelopment of the site.
Well, if it isn't put to auction, this building will stay in the state it's in for the next 21 years. There's no incentive for the owners to redevelop it if they don't own the land.
A motion seeking the postponement of the auction may be raised in a City Council meeting on Tuesday night. If not, the auction will proceed on Thursday. Andrew Lobb reporting for NBN News.
While the sky hung low over the miners' meeting at Cessnock Sports Ground, union officials spoke of the darker clouds looming above the Northern District's coal industry. The meeting was prompted by a string of blows to the miners in the past few weeks. Almost 200 jobs lost from Coal and Allied's Moonee and Wallarah pits, another 200 to go from the Newvale and Awabba state mines, and a knockback on a wage rise for underground workers. But the miners were told an extension of today's 24-hour stoppage was no way to fight those losses. Despite calls for a strike from the rank and file, the miners' union has warned against taking that course. It says if there's further industrial action, at least 2 northern operators, Newmain and Gunnedah, have indicated termination notices will be issued on Saturday, costing about 250 jobs. Instead, the union is continuing its negotiations with all levels of government, as well as organising a rally outside State Parliament House.
We have to take the fight to Macquarie Street, because it's those bastards in Macquarie Street who have been responsible for the absolute atrocious decisions in this industry that have taken place over the last number of years.
If the talks fail to save mines and jobs, strike action seems inevitable.
The miners have had enough. They've told us in no uncertain terms that they'll back this particular last-ditch attempt, but after that, the gloves are off.
Scott Bevan, NBN News. Rates may be a headache to residents, but for councils, they are their bread and butter. At last night's meeting, Newcastle's aldermen went through the motions of what's become an annual ritual. They voted to increase rates by 2.6%, the ceiling limit set by the state government.
To bring us out, to keep up with what we're doing, the way we're doing it, we had to put the thing up at 2.6%. That's pretty near the CPI rise when you take into consideration that last year we had a nil rise.
But independent alderman John Tate says the slug is too great during a recession and should have been pegged at 2%.
Surely, as leaders in the community and in charge of the public purse in local government, we should be demonstrating that we're prepared to exercise restraint that everybody else is being forced to.
I think Alderman Tate, as I pointed out last night, the last time he was running the budget, it was 26%, not 2.6%, and I don't think that's...
The day of protest was endorsed at a special meeting of Newcastle Trades Hall Council. On the 30th of November, unions around the country will protest at the radical industrial reforms being implemented by the Kennett government. According to Secretary Peter Barrack, the legislation which curtails the right to strike and abolishes weekend penalty rates has ramifications outside of Victoria.
We believe that the Jobs Back policy of the Houston coalition opposition mirrors what's happening in Victoria, and we're terrified that come the next election where Houston elected, we'd be seeing that right across the board.
Also strongly condemning the legislation is Secretary of the State Labor Council Michael Eason. Mr Eason was in Newcastle launching a new financial planning service. Chifley Financial Services is a Labor Council initiative set up to assist union members.
Chifley is available to offer workers advice about redundancy, about superannuation, advice about financial planning generally.
Mr Eason believes the union movement must diversify, offering more than just muscle in an employment crisis. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Time for a team photo today, the men from SCAT. SCAT standing for Special Casualty Access Team. The Westpac Rescue Helicopter Angel 1 became an integral part of this intense course. Today, 4 Newcastle paramedics and 1 from Belfast were learning airborne abseiling.
To the world fastest skips, 20 off the ground.
The SCAT course is all about getting medical help to accident victims trapped by Australia's harsh terrain. The photos tell the story. These men have undergone crash courses in caving, gorging, whitewater rescue, four-wheel driving and roping techniques.
We have adapted the course to suit the environments we're working in.
Brian Lynn scoured Europe for a similar course but chose the SCAT program.
And I found it was the most comprehensive and most interesting course available.
We have a rather harsh selection criteria, not because of any unjust reason, mostly because we want all the guys to survive.
All that remained after this morning's exercise, a written exam. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
Out of favour and form for the past few years, the Welsh through club side Swansea wanted to prove to the world they were back, and from the time they ran out to the time they left the field, they had the Wallabies on the back foot. And it was only desperate defence by the world champions that stopped early points. Tim Kelleher landed a couple of penalties for the Wallabies, and Alan Williams replied in kind for Swansea. And then a try to the Welsh. Australia attacked, but Swansea's defence was up to the task. Swansea went into a frenzy when they crossed again. And a Williams field goal sealed the issue. Back in Australia after dislocating his shoulder, Wallabies captain Michael Lynagh was disappointed but philosophical about the result.
Well, obviously very disappointed for the guys. Swansea are the best team in Wales, and to lose the game is a big disappointment for the tour. But I guess the only way to rectify that is to bounce back and win the next game on Saturday.
You'd have a long wait down the West End these days to spot a hotted up FJ cruising Hunter Street. Any normie worth his salt and chips will be more than a little sad to hear that the legendary Parthenon Milk Bar will soon close its doors. Nick and Pauline Magnasalis were given 4 weeks' notice to vacate the premises, which is destined for redevelopment. After working takeaways all over town, Nick cashed in on the fictional fast food joint in the Newcastle song. But for the past 10 years, his Parthenon has taken on landmark status of its own. Where else could you buy such tasty tempters as a normie burger, blast furnace, dog watch or hot FJ?
You got people coming all over the world, and they're taking photos, they're taking camera, they ask questions and all this.
The Magnasalises are determined to open a new Parthenon somewhere down Hunter Street.
A familiar sight at Marathon Stadium and grounds around the Winfield Cup. Ashley Gordon in try-scoring mood. Signed from South Newcastle in 1987, Gordon figured in 49 first-grade games with the Knights and crossed for 36 tries, including 15 in 1990, where he was the equal leading try-scorer in the league and the Dally M Wingman of the Year. But the Knights and Gordon are parting company, on good terms, and the decision hasn't been easy.
It's been a mix. Last couple of weeks. It's been a hard decision to leave Newcastle, but I think I'm going to a place where I suppose there might be more opportunity for me.
After 9 games and 9 tries this year, Gordon was relegated to reserve grade, and good form by Robbie O'Davis and Tony Herman kept him out of the top team. And now he's looking for a new start.
I've spoken to Phil Gould, and he's very positive with my ability, and hopefully, yes, I can play first grade there. And at Newcastle, of course, I'll probably be behind the 8 ball with the 2 wingers playing really good footy, and Brad Godden. So I suppose that was a telling factor, but I'm just probably looking forward to starting another new year.
With a contract that's estimated to be around $60,000 a season and a likelihood of a transfer within the education department, things would seem rosy for Gordon. But one thing remains, you can take the lad out of Newcastle, but you can't take Newcastle out of the lad.
Those years I'll just cherish, and the mates here and all my friends and family, I suppose it'd be hard to leave them all, and the memories, you can't take away. And I suppose with Newcastle I'll probably be back here to finish my footy.
Although the rainy weather was turning the Royal Newcastle Aero Club into something more suited to water activities, that didn't dampen the 11 to 15-year-olds' enthusiasm to take to the sky.
All right, when I close the door, you want to push that handle down? Okay.
The Scouts Air Activities Weekend is held once every 2 years, and this latest leap into the heavens attracted groups from throughout the Hunter region. For many, it was the first time they'd flown, and once they were down again, their heads were still in the clouds.
Excellent. Oh, look real small and everything was nature.
The organisers say there's more to the weekend than just joy flights.
They also learn about aircraft recognition, weather patterns and model aeroplane making.
And the camp might just help some career dreams to take off. After that, what would you like to do for a job?
Fly planes.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
If it was thrills that you were after, the Wingham Showground was the place to be from last night through until today. They had some of the meanest beasts that could be mustered, including the meanest of them all, a bull they call the Whistler. Competitors flocked from Queensland, the New England and the Hunter. Wingham is recognised as one of the best rodeo arenas in the country, a claim backed by the decision of the Australian Bushmen's Carnival Association to host the national rodeo titles there for the next 3 years.
Where she is now.
A year ago, the federal government allocated $2.5 million to build a railway station to serve Newcastle University. It was supposed to be built by next year, but the cost of infrastructure has held up the project. A firm hired by the university believes it would cost $500,000 to build the necessary footbridge and pathway. The university has $240,000 but can't afford the rest. But it appears the infrastructure can be built at just $112,000, a quarter of what the university was told. The Department of Engineering has found what it considers a safer and cheaper alternative, a shorter footpath and a boxed culvert instead of a fancy bridge.
We have come up with a cost figure which seems to be quite a bit less than what they said was what needed for the connection.
According to the Student Association, it's ludicrous that the university has paid an outside firm to undertake the costings when its own engineers could have done it in the first place and saved the university even more money. It's not known how much the university paid the firm in consultancy fees, but the department says using its own staff would have been far cheaper.
I think there's a lot of expertise in the university in all sorts of fields. A lot of that expertise, I think, feels it is shut out of the consultative process and, like me, I think would be glad to offer their assistance.